Hey, what up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Golf Parfection podcast. I'm joined with my host here, Matt. We are at the Golf Garage if you're in the South Bay. Coming in, your game dialed in. We have a new sign, so those who are watching on YouTube will see the beautiful Golf Garage sign, and we have a new guest. So this is Lulu, and she is, made quite a circuit in the golf world. So before, we get into the topic, why don't you first introduce yourself, Lulu? Talk about how you got into golf, and kind of like, obviously, the topic about collegiate golf, but then where you are currently in today's world of golf.
Okay, this is really cool. I've never been on a podcast, so thanks for
Welcome.
having me. So my name is Lulu. I got started in golf when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and so my dad was the one who got me into golf. I feel like that's like every story, but he got my whole family involved as a way for us to do something together. And so I've played in junior tournaments as well, in the Bay Area and kind of beyond and everything. Never got to like AJGA level quite yet, but got to experience high school golf out in Pleasanton. Shout out Foothill Golf.
All right, shout out there.
And played high school, had some really good role models that led me to really think about playing in college. And so I kind of pitched myself to different colleges and ended up at Cal State East Bay and had a really lucky experience there. Played a full 5 years with a redshirt year. And thankfully I did get my full 5 because it was right before the pandemic.
Right.
And so after that, kind of was like loitering around, you're a post athlete, you're kind of retired, you're not sure what to do. Ended up getting an opportunity to coach at Holy Names University in Oakland. And so that's where I'm at right now, studying for my master's in sports psychology and also coaching on the women's and men's teams. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm also, I coached at Las Positas for a little bit, so that's where I started to do instruction. And I'm currently now an assistant pro at TPC Stonebury and Hayward. So.
All right, so wearing many hats, like the both
many.
of you. I know you guys are, you have rich developments within the golf industry, which will be our secondary topic. But yeah, so this podcast is going to be about collegiate golf. So Matt, I also want you to kind of ask, with your students, the odds and ends about applying for collegiate golf and how to go about that. But since you have such a lot of experience in that area, I feel like this would be a perfect topic. So I guess the first question is okay, so you said you were starting out after high school looking into collegiate golf. So what is even, and you said you played for East Bay, right? Mm-hmm. So what is even the process of going about, trying to get onto a collegiate team?
I think the biggest thing you want to look at is definitely your scoring average. That's a really big deal for all colleges, depending on what level you want to get to. There's Division I, Division II, and Division III. There's also, which is a lot of the times overlooked, it's actually NAIA. So it's not just the NCAA. NAIA is also an option. There's lots of colleges that play as well. And so I think definitely scoring average is the first thing that you want to look at. And obviously I think your passion, I think the thought of being a student athlete, it's a really big commitment, whether you're playing, baseball or basketball, but golf as well. I mean, it's becoming more and more we're requiring more out of our athletes to do, training, working out. It's not just, let me just go and play around here or there. Sure. And so definitely to me, I think it's depending on your passion for the game. And if you're really trying to take it to the next level, as well as looking at scoring averages and kind of what kind of experience you're looking for in college.
When you were applying, how early did you start the process?
Oh, and then one more thing, Matt. Maybe fix your mic's falling, and so we might need to tighten that silver dial. There we go. To the right, super tight. So yeah, what was that question again, Matt?
How early did you start applying?
So I think, to be honest, I started applying really late. It was my end of or probably the beginning of my junior year where I started to really think about going to college. So when it was towards the end of my junior year is when I was okay, maybe I'll do a little bit of general research and just kind of look around, because I knew personally in terms of budgeting and as well as just my family situation, I think I wanted to stay kind of local as well as just stay in California. That's kind of my thing. And so I kind of was state schools. Let's start with state schools, because that's kind of academically where I was at. Not gonna lie, academics is not my strong suit. So that's something to think about. I'm not gonna lie, like that's big. If you're, it's not just, it's student before athlete. So that's something to really be big on, is that it's not just for the golf, but you got to be on top of your schoolwork and everything. And so when I started late, I actually sent out like emails. So I think my recruiting process is a little bit different from a lot of the newer players coming up. They have like all these like recruiting companies, and they make like a huge video, and it's a whole production. It's like really intense sometimes, like especially as a coach now, I do get a lot of recruiting profiles. Wow. So it's cool to see like just how detailed
the evolution.
It's pretty crazy. And so I think it was really prominent when I started, but I didn't really go through that process, so it was very different for me. I ended up just, I made a little swing video on my own and sent them out to a couple of state schools I knew that had golf teams, and, East Bay was the first one that responded, and I was like, oh, well, it's right in my backyard. I mean, might as well go take a visit. And I just really enjoyed the experience that they gave me and what they talked about. And yeah, that was for me, that was kind of it.
No. As far as level of importance, how was it as far as like team environment to where you wanted to go? Because I'm sure, did you tour other colleges, or were you just went to East Bay and that was like, hey, this is the place for me?
So for me, I think I did tour. I did take a tour up at like Sonoma State. I did go down to Monterey Bay to look around the area like while I was there. I didn't have the experience of like, I guess I didn't have the awareness to like tour other schools as well. Because I think the interesting thing is when I was a younger golfer, I wouldn't want to say I wasn't recruitable, but it was more so like I was a pretty average girl, like not shooting super low, like, which I'm not ashamed of. I mean, that's kind of like my level of play. And so I wasn't the type to be heavily looked at by like other schools. I was kind of like I can pick somebody up and like have them on like the B roster or anything. And so, I think because of that experience, I wasn't really expecting to tour other schools. And so for me, it was like the opportunity that I could get I lived 20 minutes away from my school. I was able to stay home and save that money, as well as, play courses that I've played growing up. And so it was just it was honestly really nice to be home. I really enjoyed that. And I did enjoy I love my coaches, and it's funny, I still see them on a regular basis because we compete against them.
That's cool.
And so, just had a great experience with them. And, team environment for me, I think, I'm really adaptable. So I think like teams are really lucky. I feel like I'm very adaptable to a lot of different people. And so, everybody I met was super friendly, and, it can be a deal breaker though. I know for a lot of other girls, I remember, especially now on the coaching side, being like talking to girls who I'm recruiting or talking to girls who are interested in our program. It's like, what do I have to say, or what do I have to show to get them to come here, kind of thing. So it's very, very different. So now that I've seen that side, it's definitely given me more insight on like, if I had like a different college experience, yeah, it's definitely possible that I would do more looking around and everything. So
got it. So I mean, Matt, for you, so we know that Daniela is looking into collegiate programs and everything. So it's interesting that you said you started late, and beginning of junior-ish year, that's considered like later. So
right.
That's surprising to me. So I mean, like Matt,
surprising to me as well.
So it's right? Kind of the same situation
again,
right now.
It's so much different than when I was first teaching and trying to get these kids to go into college. You didn't have to start out 2 years early.
Yeah,
right?
It's crazy to me.
They were, it's just a different, I mean, just level of golf is different. You used to be able to go out and shoot 85 and get on a team, right? Yeah. Now these girls are getting so much better and so much faster, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to hear like your process, right? Yeah. It's just, now there's websites that you put all your information into, and they can kind of scan through and look for you, or you can go through and fill out all the questionnaires to each individual college that you're thinking about. It's a pretty cool process, and just to be a part of helping somebody get through that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I'm sure you're learning a ton of stuff about the process, and then you're hearing stories from Lulu about the process. So you had your eyes set on East Bay, right? And so as soon as you accepted, like when you first started playing, like how was that? Like playing for on a competitive collegiate level, that's got to be something completely different, right?
It's very nerve-wracking.
I'm sure, yeah.
First and
exactly.
foremost
Yeah, yeah.
is definitely my fall freshman year was like, I didn't know. I think the funny thing is when I started playing and being on the team, like I don't think I really knew how good I was, because I was kind of like a late, like what they call like a late pick. Like, oh, like we have our roster, but we do have a spot. So
I
like
see,
you can
okay.
like walk on, or like you can come and they give me a little scholarship, and it, you know, I was like, okay, sure, like let's do this. And,
Okay.
and so I was like that like last pick. And then the sleeper, like, oh wow, like she hits the ball long, like she's very like decently consistent, like she can put up like low 80 scores. Like that was at the time, like when that was what my team needed. And so out of our like top 4, I ended up being like a starter my first year. And you know, I didn't
Nice. Nice.
yeah, and
Let's
I didn't expect that at all. And you know, it was a great experience because I had never like, you know, traveling to tournaments. I think my first year we traveled to like, I think it was Texas was like my first
wow.
big. Yeah, there was like, we used to go out there and we don't go out there anymore, but that was like my first big like travel, like, oh my God, we have to like put our golf bags in the travel bag and like take our stuff. It was really cool. And so it was nerve-wracking for sure, but I think I loved it. I think that it's such a cool experience to travel and play golf, and it was just such a big privilege. I didn't realize that I was like jumping into that, but once I realized that, hey, like the level of golf that you play at, like you can start, you can compete, and you can have the opportunity to travel and go to all these places, and it was just so great. But definitely nerve-wracking. I think it's so funny because now that I'm a coach, I see that the freshmen coming in, at least the freshmen on my team, I feel really lucky. They're very talented, and you know, they had those first like few round jitters, but you know, you settle in depending on, again, if you're motivated to settle in quickly and you get used to, if it's the right fit, I think the athlete will also know. So
okay.
yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's kind of like why you go on college tours and you go through that process to find where you want to be, especially because it's like, yeah, you want to be able to adapt to the team, to the environment, and start to play well, because you don't want to be nervous the whole year. You want to be nervous maybe the first 2 rounds of when you play qualifying, or when you go out and just even playing practice, or you want to be comfortable with the girls or the guys that you're with. And so I think that just plays into, again, the recruiting process and why it's so important, and why that whole process now, it's just very much like pitched towards the athlete, and like, but at the same time, like the athlete has to choose. It's their choice, and if they feel like it's the best fit for them, then they're going to adapt really well and play really well for the school. So
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely cool hearing your perspective on, you know, your first beginnings in collegiate golf, and it sounds like it was a blast.
Yes.
You got to travel, play golf. Who wouldn't love that?
I know, who doesn't love that?
Yeah, exactly. And then, but yeah, my impressions as like, I mean, I wasn't a student athlete in college, but like I saw all the student athletes, and I just went to Santa Clara University, right? Mm-hmm. Like it was so much work. So I mean, like, and you were talking about school and, you know, being an athlete. So how was that for you, like in terms of being that student athlete?
Yeah. So, I mean, anyone will attest to, and golf is very different because a lot of other sports, they are on campus. And so
That's true.
Yeah. So the biggest difference in golf, you know, unless you have a facility like really close by. So I know San Jose State has a really nice facility. Right. And so unless you have a facility that's like close to campus or on campus, you're definitely going to be, for me, I was commuting around a lot. So I was off campus pretty frequently, and the student athlete balance, I ended up actually changing majors. I started as a criminal justice major. Didn't end up like loving that, and ended up changing to graphic design, which is what I finished in. And that's the year that I took my redshirt year because I wanted to transition well, and that was a good choice for myself. And yeah, I think it was a lot more work than I anticipated, especially in that major in particular. There's a lot of hours that you put doing design and doing projects. It's not really like test based, whereas, you know, tests are just as hard. But I think that being a student and an athlete, it's really just time management, being responsible, knowing kind of your balance, work-life balance. And I attest to saying that student athletes are definitely like a different kind of college, like it's a different kind of college life, but it takes a certain like individual to be any kind of student athlete, whether you're playing basketball, whether you're playing baseball, whether it's golf. It's just so much different. And I didn't realize that until I talked to some of my non-athlete friends just in college. They're like, yeah, we have free time to do this, or do you want to go out and do this? And I'm like, no, I got a tournament tomorrow. Bro, I gotta go to sleep. I'm sorry, y'all. Sleep is really important for me right now. There's a lot of sacrifice involved in that experience as well. Not just, it's a privilege, but sometimes your social life suffers a little bit. Sometimes you lose sleep, and there is that balance of I want to get better, but also I have to do well in school. And I think, if you're definitely thinking about that experience, it's a challenge, but it's really rewarding. It teaches you a lot. And again, it says a lot about a person. Any person that comes to me and says, oh, I played a sport in college, I'll be like, they have mad respect for me. It takes a lot. And doing it personally too. And now for me being the coach student kind of thing, it's kind of both. I'm like an assistant coach, but I'm a graduate assistant. And so balancing both has definitely been interesting for myself. So it's I haven't gotten away from the student athlete life quite yet, but
for sure.
So as a coach, what do you think your biggest accomplishment has been?
As a collegiate coach as a collegiate coach, so funny. So we just had a tournament in Santa Rosa, this past week. And all of my ladies, they've been working really, really hard. This is our last regular season tournament, and they shot 5 over as a team.
Ooh,
and
wow.
That was out of the whole 2 days. So we played Monday and Tuesday. Out of the whole 2 days, it was the low round out of all the schools. We blew out of the schools all the water.
Right,
and I was gonna cry. I was like, guys, we did it.
That's awesome.
And it was cool because I had played at that course when I was still an athlete. So I do know that course pretty well. And so course management wise, we had a really good strategy, laid out and everything. And just that second day, there was I don't know if it was something in the water, in the air, but it just felt really good. And at the same time, my confidence as a coach, managing kind of seeing where they're at, helping read putts, as well as just, checking in with them when they need it, when they need the help. But my girls know what to do at the same time. So it's definitely a balance of being comfortable with addressing the player when, I think the toughest thing is emotion management and and energy management. For, female golf, we probably need to have another podcast about women's golf versus men's golf. Cause it's two different things. And I've been lucky to kind of entertain both sides a little bit and coach both sides. So, I won't get too much into that, but, overall, I think that was probably one of my proudest moments as a coach, was to see everything just really click well with the girls. And overall, just seeing them work really hard. It's so empowering to me to see when my teams have a lot of success, and when my athletes I felt really good about this putt today, or hearing them get excited about golf just makes me so excited.
Were you more nervous as a player or more nervous as a coach?
That's a good question.
Because I know for me, I could play. I knew generally what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. Some days would be good, some days would be bad. It didn't really affect me too much, but watching somebody that you've coached or work with and watching them play, you just know what they're capable of doing, and I get so nervous just watching. Sure. Or I'm the type of guy that if my students are playing and there's live scoring on a website, I'm on it all day. And my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm seeing if she's 1 over through 9." So we got a good round going. So you put so much of your life's work into helping somebody that it is. I just get nervous watching.
Sure. So Lulu, how about you? Yeah. Nervousness levels.
I know, it's
player, coach.
Ooh, it's hard because it's actually hard, but really cool because I have both perspectives.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to say, but I feel like it's both, because when you're playing in a tournament, you definitely feel nervous. I think it's a guarantee that you feel a little sense of pressure to do well. as well as like pressure maybe from the coach. I try to not give my girls a pressure or anything like that. But, you know, there is also now on the coaching side, I'm just like, wow, like I really want my girls to make this putt, or like I want them to do well. So like I am nervous. I think especially on Tuesday when we shot that round, I was so nervous because I was refreshing. We were tied. We were basically neck and neck with the second place. And so I was just like doing the refresh and the whole thing of the live scoring. And you know, I'm so the same. So I think it's hard to pick one. I think it's nervous I think for coaching, it's more like anxious in a good way, not in a negative way. Cause I know that can be, you know, taken negatively, but anxiety in the way that, you know, I know that my girls are capable of doing kind of like Matt was saying, like capable of doing really amazing things. And so it's like, you just want the best for them. Like absolutely, like they could shoot even, they could shoot under, like, you know, they can do it. And then when they miss that putt or like you see them like, you know, struggle, it's just like, oh, like it's a little bit of that energy. But at the same time, it's like, you know that it's out of your control, right? It's just like you've given them all the tools, and so it's kind of, you know, it's like weird to say, it's like raising a child, like you know, like I feel like you could attest to that, but I'm not there yet, but I think about that now and I'm like, man, this is like raising kids. Like you want them to do well, but at the same time, like you can't hold their hand forever. Like they're going to be out there, they're going to need to fail so they can learn, and they're going to need to struggle so that they know how to persevere and get over those walls.
You know, and I kind of feel like that about coaching too. It's like sometimes you don't want to overcoach, right?
Yes.
At some point in time, you've got to go out and play golf, right? Like, you know, and I always say it, and I've said it on this podcast several times, it's not a prettiest golf swing contest. Like, you got to go out and just put up a number, and that takes a certain level of just calmness and the ability to you know, you can watch somebody hit balls and you go, they got it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, so it's just different.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's anxious and nervous on both ends, I think. So there's never one over the other, because yeah, like the pressure that you face as an athlete, like playing for, you know, you're playing for your school, you're wearing the uniform, you know, you're representing not only, and golf is a unique sport, especially because on colleges, like you play on teams versus when you're playing individual tournaments, you know, it's just for you. But at the same time in college, there's individual scoring and there's also team scoring. So you're playing for both, but at the same time, you know, you're still competing for yourself.
And I think that could almost add more pressure because you don't want to let down the team.
Oh, for sure. That's like really big, and that plays a role in the nervousness as an athlete. I was
we could have won, but
somebody missed a putt.
Like that last three putt, you know.
Like, come on, man. You could have, you know. And it's funny because we have moments like that, but at the end of the day, it's like you guys still. You could have shaved a stroke here. You could have shaved, you know, like it's not even a blame game. Like it's more of a, we all can do better collectively versus like, it's just one person. Like it's never one person's fault. It's a team sport for a reason. And you know, if you lose together, you lose together, you win together, you win together. And that's what it comes down to. It's no different in golf, you know, so.
For sure. So yeah, like definitely talking about both, you know, playing collegiate golf and coaching collegiate golf. Wanted to touch on one more thing about playing before we move into more specific questions about coaching. So like any specific, you know, favorite memories that you had playing as an athlete on a team?
I have a great one. I have
okay,
a great story.
sure. Let's hear it. Yeah, let's hear it.
This is my absolute favorite story to tell. It was my last qualifying round ever as a senior. This is my super senior year. So it was my last qualifying round. I was, I think, I want to say 6 or 4 strokes down going to, and this is qualifying. Okay, let me set the scene. I was qualifying for the last spot for my conference championship. So it was
okay.
Yeah, we were going to San Diego that year. You know, I was like, okay, it's my senior year. Like I have to go, but I was definitely struggling a little with my game at the same time. But I was like, you know what? No, like I just got to do something. So thankfully, we were actually playing at Stonebray. This was our qualifying round, and you know, I love Stonebray. It's like I know the course like the back of my hand, and so I had a little bit of an advantage. So we come into, I was playing actually pretty well, but at the same time, I was really frustrated because I know I could be playing better, and I wasn't keeping track of the score versus my teammate. And so we come down to the 18th hole. I hit a really amazing bomb drive, and I have a chance to go for the green. So this is a par 5.
Okay.
It's a par 5. Pretty challenging par 5, and it's like a pretty risky shot to go for the green. And in my head, I just knew, I was like, if you don't do this, like, this is your absolute last, like, you just got to go for it. And I pulled out my 3-wood, which I like never use. So I'm just like, okay, I'm pulling out this 3-wood that I'm not like 100% on, but I just, at that moment, I was 100% committed to this shot. And so I committed. I was like, I'm just going to whack the heck out of this ball and try to get it to the green. I hit the best 3-wood, like, absolutely the best shot. And my coach will attest to this. So Coach Sue, if you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I hit the best the best shot I've ever hit with that 3-wood probably, and hit it to 6 feet.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
I hit it to 6 feet.
Ballin'.
The putt wasn't easy. It was a right to left break. It was like a 6-foot putt, but it was right to left. It was very strong. And I was like, I just have to make this. Like, something in my gut was telling me if I don't make this, like, I might not go. And so, you know, I get there, my hands are absolutely shaking over this putt. Thankfully, I do drain the putt. So I eagle this final hole. I walk over, I find out we're doing all the scoring. I find out, you know, no hard feelings with my teammate. We're fine. But I beat her by 1.
Oh.
With the eagle to qualify for my conference championship, which I went to, and I didn't play that well, but it was fun.
You know,
So, but that's probably the best story.
That's so cool to hear, you know, like almost movie-like situation. You know, you kind of
Crazy.
dream of those situations, right?
Oh,
you know,
of
all the
course.
time, like, oh, I have this, I got to make these cool shots, or I have to, you know, execute, and then you do it. That's totally awesome to hear. So,
The best.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure we can go into more, you know, collegiate experiences as a player, but wanted to continue on here and talk about your coaching experiences now. So to reiterate, you do coach what school again?
Holy Names.
Holy Names
in Oakland.
In
Yep.
Oakland, okay. And you coach both the boys and the girls, right?
I support both. I'm officially the women's assistant, but I've had experience with both. I think, yeah, in the past year, because we were short-staffed, I had to help with both. And I feel really lucky because not a lot of people get that opportunity.
Sure, yeah.
And so I do kind of support both teams.
Got it. And so I guess in the first question right off the bat, then, like, what is the role of the, you know, as an assistant? Then, like, you know, like in high school, I played for the high school team, and my coach kind of just told us a few things, but he just drove us to places, you know.
Yeah.
So at the collegiate level, then kind of at your position, what's your role, and then what do you do for them specifically?
So definitely biggest role is to support my head coach and his philosophies and you know, his practice sessions, how he kind of wants to run the team. First and foremost, it's mostly supporting him. You know, my input is definitely warranted because of my experience. I think it helps for sure. So, you know, for example, like if we're in tournaments, if in this past tournament, I was we traveled to separately. So I was with the girls by myself, and I play the role of head coach when my coach is not there. And so essentially we are supporting them. And obviously, yes, there is the factor of making sure they get there. So we drive,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course.
there's a chaperoning of like the role of that, but definitely, you know, I think because I'm also getting the experience in sports psych, for me, there's a really big emphasis on teaching the mental side, mental management, and encouraging them and making sure that, like, emotionally on the course, that they're very much like, hey, like, you got 5 holes left, you got to give me 100% on 5 holes. Like, you don't give up when you're not playing well. And to me, that's a big thing. The big role as an assistant, and even as just any assistant or head coach, I think that can be played. And so more specific things, definitely like running practices when coach isn't there.
Okay.
Things like if there's workouts in the morning, sometimes we got to go, it's early, but you know, we go when we go. And there's all those roles there. It's definitely making sure, you know, it's a student athlete experience, but there's roles and responsibilities, and making sure that the athletes are on time and making sure that they have everything they need is pretty much my job.
All right. Yeah. Any questions specifically for Lulu about the coaching, or?
No,
I
it was
know
just great to listen. It really was.
Yeah. Like, you know, it's cool to hear you have such the unique experience of being both. I think that's so cool that we got to listen to both perspectives on that. And I was already going to ask, what accomplishment are you most proud of? But you already talked about that last tournament, so that was fantastic to hear.
Yes.
And I'm sure, Matt, both of you share the fact that you can get so much, satisfaction and gratitude for seeing your students and your athletes do so well. I think that's so cool, right?
There's something about coaching that just you see somebody accomplish something that they had no idea that they could do it, and it just brings you this joy, and it's like an addiction. You just want to do it over and over and over again. And
That is absolutely correct.
Then I just want them to hit the same shot and hit it further and further and further.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So so that talks about your most proudest accomplishment, but then I guess any challenge that came up as being an assistant coach that you didn't really see when you were hopping in, because now that you saw the other side of the coin, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't really understand what my coach was trying to do there, but now that I'm the coach, I see what that person was trying to do for me as a player.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think the challenge is kind of like Matt brought up, you can coach too much, especially when you're out in a tournament. It's kind of like that read the room kind of thing. Some girls they don't want the help, they got it, and they're they don't want you to read their putts. They don't want you to set them up or tell them about the line. They don't want to know what the yardage for the hole, little things like that. There's definitely ranges from player to player, and so there's definitely that challenge of knowing when is the right time to step in, as well as kind of reading them and saying hey, I know that you're struggling right now. We need to get you out of it. And I need to give you a little bit of guidance. So finding that balance of giving them the support when they need it, but also laying back when they don't need it, or when they don't want it.
And how to help somebody who thinks that they don't need it. Right. There is a lot of that, and it's just a lot of changing thought processes, because you can have somebody play the same round, they keep hitting the same miss, and they don't know how to get rid of it, right? And I was they don't need the help, but it's not saying we need to change something, we just need to change the mindset.
Yes.
Right. And if you can adjust that, and that's why I'm a big fan of not keeping it so. I don't want you to have focus for 5 straight hours, right? I want you to focus for 12 seconds at a time. And then in between that, breathe, think about what you got to do next, but keep it a little light, because you're out there on an island. You're out there by yourself, right? You will mentally exhaust yourself by the 9th hole if you are just
rigid.
Right. So you just let it go. So, when I caddy for my kids, it's we're laughing and if Daniela's listening, she hates the way that I organize her bag. Right? She has everything. She has everything in a set pocket, and I'm a guy that just throws it in. So we always joke, and she's like, "Where's all my clothes?" Hey, caddy's got a system, right? I have zero system. I'll tell you that right now. But it's just you gotta be able to know, again, read the room and know when they need help with something. Whether I'm jumping in and saying, "Hey, if it's an alignment issue or something like that, I'm automatically gonna jump in and be like, "Hey, just be aware. You were 10 yards right of your target and you had to pull it back online," right? But if it's a swing issue, you got to be really I'm never jumping in at the right. I'll say something. It's hey, make sure you get through. I'll say things like get through the ball. I never want to say things like, hey, your face is here, your elbow's here. Yeah. I'm going to make more generalized theories of hey, get off your right side, right? Things like that, just to kind of guide her back into what, she or whoever I'm caddying for, and they know what they're supposed to do. Yep. It's just about getting out there and doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So it's cool hearing both of you, because you guys you're a collegiate coach, but you're a swing coach. So, kind of riffing off of each other and, hearing your experiences and the advice that you give. And then people listening, they definitely like hearing always extra tidbits from you, Matt, because a lot of us who listen you are our swing coach. So it's hearing all that stuff is awesome. And, it's just hearing, both perspectives from you is great. So I guess my other question is then, so it sounds like the game of collegiate golf, especially for women, is growing, right? And I'm a huge LPGA stan.
Yes.
And,
Thank you.
it's getting pretty wild in terms of the teams that are coming through. So for you, what you're seeing, it's growing, right? So definitely, what do you think needs to improve now to help grow the women's game, I guess, for collegiate, for college athletes?
I think exposure and education.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is these girls coming up, and kind of like Matt was saying, they're getting better, they're getting more talented, there's more competition, which is great. I think that's great. And then but the biggest thing is that whether it's a D1 or a D3, you still have the opportunity to play college golf. And so you don't have to necessarily be a D1 level player to continue playing golf. I think there's more options than these girls realize. And I think like everybody always looks to, I want to go play at Stanford, I want to go play at Cal, and I want to go play at, whatever D1 university, USC, wherever. But, there's like George Fox is actually I think they're still ranked number 1 in D3. And they have a very formidable team. And I know Menlo is D3 as well. Menlo is local. They're D3 as well. And they compete in D2 tournaments. We see them in tournaments sometimes, and they've been getting some really strong teams. And I think that's what it attests to. The biggest thing is the education around what options that these girls have. And so I think if there is a way to really put that out there, whether it be like, for me, it's something I'm obviously thinking about all the time when I talk to any girl that I start coaching. I'm like, hey, like, you can play in college. Like, I don't, whatever level you're at, you can still play in college. Like, don't discount that. Always like believe in your ability, and like if you really want to play in college, you can do it. It's not just I need to shoot 72 to like play D1. Like, no way. I think that a lot of girls don't understand that. And a lot of girls, I think the age that they give up golf is really around high school. And that's primarily because they don't understand that there's just so many more opportunities other than, having an average where you shoot 80 all the time. You can shoot 90 to 100, honestly, and play like collegiate golf. Like, it's kind of crazy to say, but it's real. Like, if you want the experience, you can find it.
And I think at the same time, like, there's no draft for golf, right? You're not getting drafted out of you have to play D1 to get drafted. You can play D1, you can play D2. If you're a solid player, you can still go on and play professional golf if you're good enough, right? And you never know, you may start as the walk-on and end up being the starter, and you develop more as you play, right? But it's also about exposure to putting yourself in that element over and over and over and over again, right? If you're playing college, you're just playing like tournament after tournament after tournament. So it gets to the point where either I'm going to play good or I'm going to play bad. But you know what? Next week I tee it up again, right? So so it eventually kind of like deadens the process. So it takes away some of those nerves. And no, like if I shoot 67 or 80, doesn't matter. Next week I'm gonna have to tee it up in a different city, different
course,
state, right?
start the process
So
all over.
and it just, but you get more familiar with playing under that sort of pressure, right? And I think that's the same way with the kids that I have now. I'm saying play as many tournaments as you can, right? And I say it all the time that the more you're at the top of that leaderboard, the comfortable you are being there, and then those extra putters, those putts are going to start falling. Then you're going to make that one up and down that maybe you wouldn't before. You're just more comfortable being there. And I think, like I said, with college golf, it's the same. Like, you're put in that situation over and over and over again. You're going to come out a stronger player.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, yeah, like, until you brought up the, hey, like, how does one even get into collegiate golf? Like, I don't think that's, like, openly, like, you kind of have to go looking for it, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so that's kind of, like, one of the issues. And then, I just thought, like, hey, like, it would be something super easy to kind of sign up and do, but like, unless you're like really looking for it, you can really discourage a lot of these girls. So like, it's positive here that you had a good experience, but I feel like there's so much more for the girls game.
Yeah, I think definitely, like, I try to advocate as much as possible. Like, I'll talk to anyone and be like, you have daughters who play, like, get them into it. Like, just keep it definitely is the exposure, not only like as a kid, as a junior. And I think, especially now that I've taught through the pandemic, especially seeing like the crowds and droves of, kids coming through, and seeing more girls play makes me so happy, because even in like kids camps that I've run, there's obviously still a ratio of like 5 men or 5 boys to like 2 girls. And like, it's kind of unfortunate. I think in reflecting on my experience when I was growing up, golf was not popular. Like, I was playing, when I told my friends like, hey, I play golf, they're just like, what?
Golf's not a sport. Blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah, you get
that's
the
lame.
the whole thing, and I got all of that, and like, it wasn't until I was again, I probably would have quit if I didn't play in high school, because when I joined the team, there was 14 girls on this team, and I was like,
wow.
where did 14 girls
Yeah.
come out? Like,
That's a lot of-
like
that's a lot of girls.
and in my town, I'm from like where I'm from, there was just no girls. There's probably one or two other girls, and they were all older than me, so I never even played with them in competitions. And so I was probably and I was very introverted as a kid, so I didn't really make friends that easily. And I didn't realize how important that was to build a community. And I think like that's what really pushed me. And to me, still today, that's what really pushes me, is to build, find that community. And the golf community, I absolutely love it. It's so welcoming. And I want more women to be exposed to that. I want more girls to be like, hey, like, it's cool to play golf. Like,
Yeah.
you get your friends into it and you can all play together, and then you have a little girls team. Like, that's the best. And so I definitely always push for it. And definitely when I see girls at the high school level and I'm like, hey, like, you think about playing college, and some of them are like, no, I'm not really sure. Or like, yeah, I'm not good at the first thing that I hear a lot of is, I'm not good enough. And I absolutely, like, I'm a little bit broken by that, but also like, it makes me more aware again of the lack of education, the lack of information that's out there, to be like, hey, like, girls golf is not just 72 and better. It's 85, it's 90. Like, you don't need to be an ace player to develop to get there. Like, you can get onto a team, and like Matt said, you can develop yourself into an amazing golfer, and like, that's necessary on college teams as well. You like, the thing that people don't think about is, on a roster, 5 travel, but you need probably 10 girls on your team, right? So the necessity of not only like a quote unquote a B squad or a developing player on a team is very undermined, I think. Is to
I see.
Yeah, and it's to me, it's super important to actually see that. It's like, you want to, obviously you have your main players who are very good, but you want players to develop into those roles, because you want that seniority, you want that experience for them to be able to be like, hey, like, I've been on this team for 2 or 3 years now. I know what I can teach the underclassmen, whether I've started or not. Like, this is how it goes. This is when workouts are. This is where we practice, right? I think having that role model on a team, and I attest to that very much, because that was my experience. Like, when I was coming on as a freshman, and again, I didn't know anyone in high school. I went to a completely new high school. I didn't have friends, and on the golf team, the seniors on my golf team were so welcoming, so humbling, always included me in everything, and they were just like amazing role models, and that really inspired me to be a good role model to others. And eventually I took on that role. I was captain of my high school team, and I was captain of my college team as well, and I do feel that now, like, I'm a lot more extroverted, a lot more excited about being responsible and taking care of others, and that's kind of been in my nature now. And so, I think coaching came really natural to me as an option, because I just love kind of leading and being a guide and helping others.
Awesome. Okay, so last question before we wrap this one up. So I guess more around, because we were talking about this off camera, more around the recruiting process then. So you are an assistant coach, but you probably have some insights with the head coach on this. Like, what does that look like? And you said there's some differences between, the men and the women too. But let's start with the women. Like, what is that as a coach? How does the recruiting process work?
So it's kind of interesting. So if you go through like an organization or a recruiting like website profiler company, they will probably ask you kind of, I think like Matt said this, they take your information, kind of, what your scoring average is, what tournaments have you played in, like they get a ballpark of what you do as a golf athlete, but they also get, a gist of your personality, trying to get to know what are you looking for in your college experience. Do you want to stay like local or where do you want us to pitch to? And through these recruiters, they'll actually send us emails. So we will get emails from like different companies, different people, because they'll pitch for you, right? So that's their job. It's like, essentially you do have to pay a fee to these recruiting companies, but they will do that work for you. So they'll market you. And so we do get emails I get emails every once in a while saying, this is so-and-so player, this is their scoring average. Like, would you like to look at their profile? And us as coaches, we have the role to either, make that choice to kind of look at their profile and, see if they're a good fit for our squad and everything like that. And that's kind of really where it starts. I think if you're taking a different route where kind of like me, like I didn't go that like recruiting route because, to be honest, it can get expensive.
Sure.
That's the real talk. But, for me, it's, I think swing videos, definitely have swing videos, scoring averages and tournaments that you've played in, knowing distance, knowing yardages. I think that's big because, like Matt was saying, like girls are hitting it farther now. And that is very appealing to a lot of colleges to have girls with power, right? And so knowing your yardages and being able to like list them, and just being able to think about, I think, what you're looking for in a college experience, like in general, what do you want to study? What do you, maybe like, for example, people doing nursing might have challenges playing golf because nursing is a very demanding academic like lifestyle and that's just the truth, right? And it's like you have to pick and choose, and sometimes if you pick out academics over sport, like that's totally fine. And so those are things to think about when you are going through that recruiting process. And for me, like I looked at schools that I thought, okay, I want to be local, so I emailed schools locally. But you can see on most athletic pages for schools will always have like a tab where you can fill out a form that says you're interested in being recruited. And so that's I think that's something that's very down low that maybe not a lot of upcoming high schoolers know about.
Sure.
That you can go to like Cal probably has one, like we have one on our website. We have a little tab that you can like interested in becoming a student athlete. And because there's a lot of people under the radar. There are a lot of good talent that's under the radar that they don't know how to do the recruiting process. They don't have the money for it or, whatever situation, but they want to play in college and they just don't have the support to guide them. And so, that's pretty much my experience is I did it myself. And it's not to say I'm that type of person who's like, I'm a go-getter. Like if I want something and I know what I need to do, then I'll do it. And so I was the one who sent the emails and took my videos and recorded my stats, and I sent those out. And, luckily I got picked up. And that's kind of also a testament to like, if you really want that experience and that's something you want to make for yourself, then it's definitely doable. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of avenues that there's a process on this side where you can have somebody do the work for you or you can do it yourself. So
Got it.
Two different sides to it.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, Matt, you find that interesting because now you have future. It sounds like you have future athletes.
Gives me some insight.
Yeah.
So
like,
that's awesome.
it's time to go film some videos of Daniela and get
Well,
her.
it's nice because we can I just forward TrackMan data.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody's
yeah.
interested, I'm
That's
like,
great.
what's your email? I forward you, all the data. That way you can see it. You're seeing swing to all the data points that we want you to see, right? So you can see the length. You can see spin access numbers. You can see attack angle numbers. You can see these kids are hitting the ball straighter and further.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that wraps up this particular podcast. We're going to have one more with Lulu on it and the next one, so stick around, subscribe. I'll put all of everyone's social medias in the description below. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that one. Keep chasing. We'll see you in the next one.